Mark Noonan, CPL Commissioner and CEO of Canadian Soccer Business, here with me. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing great. How about you, Andi?
I'm good.
Excellent.
Questions for you, obviously, because there are a lot of people in this country who care about soccer. In particular, they care about Canadian soccer. They care about the national teams, and they want to make sure they're taken care of. So there are questions where people want the answers to, and I'm hoping you can provide some insight, some clarity, transparency. That seems to be the big thing.
Sure.
The players feel that there isn't clarity and transparency. So if anything, I guess I want you maybe to pretend that I'm a player from the national team. You're speaking to both the men's and women's national team. Why is Canadian soccer business good for the game in this country?
Okay. Let me just start with, I like the word transparency. We at CSB probably haven't done a great job of talking about us and what we do for the game in this country. But the first thing I'll say about Canadian men's national team, women's national team, youth national teams, professional leagues, League One Ontario, is that we're the engine of growth for those things, and we're an ally. We want the national teams to have the appropriate resources for them to be successful, because you know what? When our national teams are successful, it grows the game in Canada, which is going to help grow our business in every part of soccer in Canada. So we're huge allies and supporters and fans and everything else of these teams.
There are a lot of people who are acknowledging that Canadian soccer business, I'll just start saying CSB from now on, has benefited the men's game with the launch of the Canadian Premier League. There obviously is the understanding of how important it is to have a domestic league, hence why the women are fighting for one too, and why there should be give back there. We'll get there in just a moment, but maybe now let's eliminate the men's national team from the equation and pretend that I'm just a player from the women's national team.
Sure.
How does CSB benefit me?
You know, CSB benefits you in a number of different ways. First of all, it creates opportunities for you to play. Certainly things like League One, where we have a number of Canadian and international women as well as men have come up through League One. But it also benefits you because we provide financial resources and guarantees to Canada Soccer, which were 3 times what they were making before CSB made their guarantees in 2018, when nobody was knocking at that door. So we provide financial resources. Candidly, we're pushing the federation to do more. For example, we're pushing the federation to create a send-off series and offering things like, can we do it in one of the stadiums that is controlled by owners of CSB at rent-free? For example, to be able to make sure more revenue goes into CSA. We want to understand what the needs of these teams are. Are there deficits that we might be able to help out? Can we create incremental revenue to be able to address directly what those problems are? We don't know what they are, but you know, we're part of the solution here.
Let's talk about that send-off series, because I did see that in the press release that CSB put out. And when the women put their statement out, part of what was upsetting them with the announcement of the budget cuts was that there weren't going to be any home games before the 2023 World Cup. So were you a little surprised to hear that, if what you're saying is you were offering 4 home games to be played?
Yeah, and we're working. I have a meeting this afternoon with Canada Soccer to discuss things like that, and what are the issues, the specific issues, and the deficits, and you know, can we help in that regard? You know, these women need to play at home. You know, they need to be in front of their own fans. They need a send-off game to the World Cup where we show them how much we appreciate and support and want to see them do well in Australia. By the same token, you know, Bev Priestman needs to make sure that they're playing appropriate competitive matches leading up to the tournament. So it's finding that balance between making sure that team has the best possible preparation and playing the best teams in the world getting ready, but also giving the fans something and giving these players a send-off that they deserve before they head to the World Cup.
We know the deal with CSB and CSA that came about back in 2018, and I mean, there were press releases. There wasn't a lot of pomp and circumstance around it, but it was out there if anyone wanted to see that the deal was done. Were you perhaps, you know, the CSB surprised at all that the players felt like they were learning about this for the first time last year. That was the crux of also, the men last year and their ongoing labor dispute with CSA was they went, wait a second, what is this CSB deal?
Yes and no. A little bit surprised in that my board chairman gave a presentation to the women's national team in July of last year, outlining what CSB was, answering questions, and offering, hey, listen, our door is open to help. So there's actually been a direct meeting. But I also take some of the blame ourselves. We haven't done a very good job of telling the story of what CSB does and how we're creating opportunity for Canadians across every level of the ecosystem here. Because this is about how do we grow Canada soccer? I know there's specific short-term, okay, we've got to get a labor deal done, but I want to look 20 years down the road and how do we join together to build soccer in Canada? And that's going to take infrastructure, it's going to take programming, it's going to take a collective effort amongst us all to get where we need to be. And there's so much potential.
Let's go back to the amount that CSB and CSA agreed to pay CSA every year. Mm-hmm. And correct me if I'm wrong, that was based on their highest financial year, which would have been 2012. Is that how you came to the amount of, is it $3 million?
So in terms of the actual numbers, there's been a lot reported. What I can say, it was 3 times what they were getting at the time. Okay, so it was 3 times. It's contractually guaranteed. No matter how well the teams do or how poorly those teams do, we have to pay that guarantee. We also took $1 million of production costs out of CSB's budget that we're responsible for now. So that went right to the bottom line for them. And I can say this amount goes up every single year, no matter what it is that happens on the field. And so I can't give you the specific number because we're bound by confidentiality, not just with CSA, but also every partner deal that we does have a confidentiality clause in it. I can tell you, though, is that CSA is a much, much better place than they were before CSB. And we're taking all the risk here.
I don't think anyone disputes that, when you came in 2018, when the CSB came in, CSA needed help in selling the broadcasting rights, in selling sponsorship rights. Mm-hmm. And, you bought low when no one else was interested. Now there's a ton of interest because that is the world of sport. When you do well, things grow. The men qualifying for the World Cup and continuing to look good with the youth that's on that team, they're going to be good for years to come. The women have been good for a very long time, and that gets capped with an Olympic gold medal. So now the product has grown, and it feels like there's a bit of a crossroads here between what is the right thing to do from a business perspective and what is the right thing to do from a, call it a fairness, moral perspective, because the product has grown for CSB. And the players are asking, how does that now benefit us, considering we are the ones who have helped it grow? Is there a chance that the money that's given every year to CSA, is there room to negotiate based on what the players are doing performance-wise to avoid the announcement that was made this weekend, where it's been the best 2 years of this program's existence and there were budget cuts?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for CSA and budget cuts, but I can say that we have proactively gone to the leadership of CSA with an offer to help. Those discussions are ongoing, and that means incremental resources. What can we bring to the table uniquely as CSB? I mentioned maybe free stadium rental for our send-off game that is going to help address the I guess the deficits. But the other thing I'll say is that CSB is a small fraction of CSA's overall revenue. If you look at the revenue, they get the most revenue out of registrations and playing matches and FIFA prize money and FIFA development money. We don't touch any of that. So to point the CSB as this massive generator of revenue is actually not necessarily the right narrative, because CSA is a much larger organization than what the contribution that CSB makes. So we want to play our part. We fundamentally believe that CSB can play a great role helping these teams be successful and helping grow the sport that really is at its infancy in this country. And our leadership has invested, say, $100 million without taking a single distribution. And there's a lot of investment before the teams started doing well that I think needs to be appreciated.
That was in the statement, the $100 million. And right away, people think, was that $100 million that went strictly into CPL? Is there anything you can shed on where that investment went to?
It's going into creating opportunities. Certainly CPL is a big part of it. And I hope people understand without CPL, there's no World Cup in 2026. That's a requirement. We're investing Vancouver FC, building a brand new stadium. If you look at League One in 2014, I think it had nine programs, and this year we're going to have 160 programs, growing League One into places like the Maritimes and the Prairies, creating things like the first interprovincial championship for women and putting it on your network for the first time in history. Those are the type of things that CSB is doing to contribute to the game. You think about there are 4 referees that are participating in the Australia-New Zealand World Cup. All of those referees are getting really important games, including 3 women in CPL. So it's those opportunities. You look at your very own Jordan Wilson. And I watched your guys' show last night and thought it was terrific. Here's a guy that is getting opportunities through CPL and then an opportunity beyond to stay involved in the game and media. Or Drew Becky's another great example. Great player and representative for Atletico Ottawa. Now he's moved into the front office. Mason Trafford, the same thing. These guys are all taking CPL and helping to create a soccer ecosystem.
And I think you know where I'm going to go with this, and because all of that is fantastic, but I am hearing the names in particular of a lot of men. So now, Janine Becky might ask, well, what about me and playing at home? I'm wondering if there's any conversation with the CSB and Project 8 and really helping to invest in a pro domestic league. And I'm not trying to dismiss League One Ontario. That is so important for the women. League One Ontario, League One BC. We know that these are things that are launching interprovincial. It's
3 of those referees we're talking about are women. So I mean, it's not just
So it's there. 100%, Mark. It's there. But people now start to look at the pro level because that is what the women are talking about. Is there any conversation there?
We need a women's league, full stop. But we need a women's league that is set up to be successful. I think we can play a role in that, and we're open to having any conversation with anybody that can help build that. I'm old enough to remember that I saw 2 women's leagues fold in the United States, starting with the WUSA, followed by the WPS, because they didn't set it up right. And few people realize that the NWSL now, which is really hitting its stride, and Jessica's a fantastic leader, commissioner there. But until last year, all the top players in that league were subsidized because their salaries were being paid by the federations. That's what it takes to be successful. So what we need to do is join together the stakeholders and say, how do we create a successful women's league? Because Canada needs a women's professional league. Canada deserves a women's professional league. And just like CPL has done on the men's side, it's going to create all these opportunities for women to grow into the game, whether it's as a player, administrator, or referee, or you name it. And if we can play a role in that, we absolutely want to be part of that solution and believe in it 100%.
I know you mentioned it, a little bit earlier, but just kind of going back, because I feel the theme once again, right? Clarity, transparency. Yeah. And when there isn't enough communication, stories start to develop caterpillar legs, right? And it just kind of takes off. And you alluded to it, where there isn't a real understanding of what money the CSB does actually bring in, because a lot of people now start to believe that any money the CSA could make, any money that could go to the players, goes to CSB. So what exactly is the CSB in charge of?
We're very simple. We're in charge of commercial rights, which is media and sponsorship. That's it. Media and sponsorship. We don't sell no revenue from game tickets, no revenue from uniform deals, no revenue from FIFA, no revenue from registrations. None of that comes to CSB. It's very simple. Sponsorships and the agreement we have with your company, really the two main things that CSB has.
How open is CSB with the players and letting them know the sponsorship deals that have come in?
Yeah,
the dollar amounts.
I'd love to sit down with the players and the representatives and talk about it. There are a number of players on both national teams that have directly, individually benefited from CSB, and they've gotten endorsements and appearances brokered by CSB with these partners, and they've directly benefited from it. So many of them know that the ones that have been chosen by our partners to do promotional work, that CSB is driving revenue directly to those individual players. But I'm happy. We would love to sit down with the players. I think you're right. It's dialogue is what's important, and what also important. How do we grow the game in Canada? Because I worry about how do we compete against basketball or hockey or other forms of entertainment, because Canada Soccer has the opportunity to be the #1 sport in Canada, and that's what I'm focused on every day. And how do we join together to do that? And there's going to be bumps in the road. Labor is always a challenging discussion on both sides of the equation. We're not involved. We really hope that they resolve it, and if we can be helpful in that way, that's the role we want to play.
And I guess, finally, when you talk about being helpful, is the communication, how open, right, again, are you with the CSA and saying, we need to help the women make sure they have every resource possible as they get ready to represent our country at the World Cup?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody who cares about soccer in Canada has to get behind that statement. And what do they need to be successful? And if we're lacking, I don't know exactly what it is, but we're lacking. How can we help? We want to help to make sure that this team has what it needs to be successful, because when they're successful, guess what? Canada Soccer grows. When Canada Soccer grows, that's good for everybody in the ecosystem, including CSB. And
it's a story, true. And it's a story we're going to continue following. I know all parties have issued statements. All parties will continue to talk about this. Right. So, we will be calling upon you again.
No, I hope so. We don't want to be in the shadows. We don't want to be misrepresented as this company that is stealing money, when we're actually doing just the opposite. We're investing money, losing money. Both CPL and CSB are losing money every single year. And if people don't believe that, I invite anybody to come join our group and just be prepared to write checks and invest in the sport for a long time. And maybe you're going to get a return down the road as this thing develops. And that's certainly our belief, but it's hard work. Building leagues, building a sport is really, really hard. And we need everybody on the same page to be able to maximize the opportunity for the sport here.
Yeah, and I think we're everyone from players to people in the business sector to fans. We're all at that fork in the road where how do we make it all come together to make this work? Mark, appreciate you taking the time.
Great. Thank you, Andi.